Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
All right,
Yes. Hi,
fantastic.
hello. This is David.
Hi, guys. Looks like
Hey.
everyone's here. Amazing. So we are here with the next panel, ready to talk about all good things relating to empowering patients and practitioners through sharing information, sharing data. And I'm joined by an amazing panel, David Hall, James Hamrick, Jason Lazar, and Stan from our very own Stan Kashnowski. I do believe we're waiting on one more person. Is that right?
Do you see Dr. Leonardo?
No, he is not in yet.
Can you, for some reason, I can't turn on my camera. I don't know if you can control that or not. Or me.
Let me try.
Hi,
No, I don't see an
I'm
option for that,
I'm
Stan.
here. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Oh,
we can
hello,
hear you.
Leonardo.
Yes, Dr. Leonardo. You made it?
Yes.
Okay,
Hi.
great.
For some reason, I cannot start my video.
Yes.
Yes, I think they have it
Me
blocked
neither.
for now.
Okay.
Yeah, just go ahead and see if you can make us co-hosts, Julia. That might fix it.
Yep. I'm going to do that now.
It's interesting. I've never had that happen before.
Oh,
No, we
okay,
didn't
I
have
thought it
this
was
issue this
supposed-
morning either.
No, it's not happened on the platform yet. It's
Okay.
fascinating.
Oh, there
Great.
we are. I can see your
That
wonderful
thing worked.
faces.
I'm going to try to get better light.
Me too. Yes.
All right. So who's missing?
I am.
Stan, there you are.
Yeah, I'm
Moderator.
in.
Fantastic.
There we go.
There we are.
And
Okay,
just to
great.
let you know, Dr. Leonardo would like to share his screen at some point.
That's not a problem. He'll be able to do that since he's a co-host.
Okay,
Great.
okay,
Fantastic.
excellent.
Well, without further ado, I will let you guys take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Outstanding. So welcome everybody. Good afternoon and good morning, good evening. For those of you on the West Coast, just tuning in at 11 a.m. Pacific time. I'll let the room fill up as we begin the session, but wanted to welcome just a highly esteemed panel to today's day 2 of the 8th annual 2021 HITLAB Summit, and wanted to kick things off with some introductions about this really important topic that we're focused on today around patient data and understanding the power of information sharing for physicians and to enable physicians to and empower patients. And this idea of data is a big one, particularly in the age of diversity and certainly the importance of inclusion in health equity. But this idea of power of information sharing to enable doctors and empower patients has never been more important in an age of our new endemic. So let's start with some introductions. James, why don't you start, and then we'll go to David, Jason, and David.
Great. Thank you, Stan. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm James Hamrick. I am a medical oncologist. I kind of wear 2 hats in my career. Every Monday, I see patients in Atlanta, Georgia, in a general medical oncology practice, where I sort of see a cross-section of all of the blood and cancer disorders that you find in the US. I spend the rest of the week working for a cancer data company called Flatiron Health, where I lead the team of clinical experts. We provide software for frontline cancer providers, and we also generate insights from data in real world evidence to help drive cancer research. So it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Fantastic. And then let's go with Dr. Lazar.
Good afternoon. I'm Jason Lazar. I am a cardiologist by trade. I work in an inner city area in Brooklyn, where I also serve as the Vice Dean of Education for the medical school. Today, the digital health glass for me is only half full. As you can see, I have a patch over my eye. Not even 2 different eye surgeries yesterday could keep me from serving on this panel with my esteemed colleagues. So you'll excuse my appearance.
No worries. And for today's session, we'll be referring to you as Pirate Jason, or Jason the Pirate, or Captain Lazar. I'm not sure what, but it looks great. You look wonderful.
It's white, so I'm a good pirate today.
You're the good pirate. Love it. All right, and we have David Hall. David, if you could do a small introduction as well.
Okay, yes, thank you, Stan. David Hall, CEO of TAM. We are a doctor-first digital health innovation platform. I am former Indiana University Medical Center, former Harvard University, Fortune 100 management, and 10 startups with 2 exits. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
That's impressive. That's a really impressive background. Great to have you on board as well. And yes, Dr. Aguiar, please, a little bit of background on yourself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Leonardo Aguiar. I'm talking from Brazil. I'm a board-certified plastic surgeon, and I am working with digital health and innovation with my patients and some companies for about 10 years. And I hope I can share my real-life experience to you.
That's wonderful. And I think, again, let's start off just for the audience to give everyone a little better understanding of your interaction as clinicians, as physicians, and how you're working with patients, and how the information sharing process, information access process is currently evolving in your practice. And then we'll go back to you, James, if you could start and just give us a little bit of understanding about the importance of information and in the context of information in your practice.
Absolutely. So, during my career as an oncologist, which I'm starting to get older now, but really started, I finished my training in 2006. We've enjoyed this wonderful explosion of innovation in terms of the ways to understand tumor biology and to select treatments that are targeted against the tumor. And so, outcomes have improved. The unintended consequence of all of the explosion of innovation and the availability of testing of all very sophisticated genomic testing, et cetera, has required that as a frontline clinician, you can ingest information specific to your patient in a way that is actionable right there in the clinic. And so when you put that into context with the digitization of health records, my day-to-day when I'm in clinic is a lot of me interacting with technology. So with software, with an electronic medical record, and with a patient and their families in the room, and trying to distill down, make sure that we're able to get the correct information, not only the biology of the tumor, the latest treatments that are available, any research studies that might be available, but also the things personal to the patient. So how are they feeling? What's important to them? What's their daily life experience like? And how can we try to make that better? Synthesizing all of that into a meaningful brick and mortar visit can be really challenging. And it can be really challenging as a generalist. And I know this probably resonates not only in oncology, but with all providers, keeping up and making sure that you have all the information at your fingertips to make the best decision for your patient. So part of it is simply information management in the digital age, distilling down an avalanche of information and making sure that you're able to have the key information that you need to take care of your patient. The second piece that is very much alive in my clinic is the idea that patients have novel ways of accessing information. So patient portals might allow them to review lab results, review imaging results, which are central to their care, and also communicate with myself and our team outside of the brick and mortar visit. So, whether it's through a message or potentially through a telehealth visit, those are efficiencies that generally have a lot of opportunity to improve the care experience, but not done well. They don't always do a couple of risks. Number one, if they're not built into the physician's workflow in a way that makes sense for the flow of the clinic and the doctor, they can become problematic and inefficient, and things can get missed. And secondly, they risk increasing disparities. So, you can get to a point where if a patient has a certain degree of technological sophistication, they may have a very different experience if we're not careful than a patient who, for instance, is not able to access a telehealth visit or doesn't have access to a portal to get their medical records. So it's a fascinating time. I'm an eternal optimist, but understanding how to leverage technology to improve the outcomes for all patients is part of what's most fun about innovating right now in medicine.
Love it. Absolutely love it. All right. And that's a great context too, because I think so much of what we're doing today is layered in there with rubrics and frameworks. It sounds like you've got a really good framework working for you as well. And Dr. Lazar, maybe give the audience a little bit more context about how you use information within your practice as well, and downstate, since you're a dean at Downstate Medical Center.
Yeah, sure. I think some of my experience is very similar to James. I work in an inner city area, and I must say that the use of health information technology is somewhat different in that setting. The pandemic served as a huge catalyst for us to pivot to telemedicine. And I must say, despite the rise of telemedicine throughout the country, most of our televisits really were by phone. Patients, could not access the visual aspect of it. Even patients that regularly used WhatsApp and, FaceTime type of applications. It does cause us a little bit of cause for concern that digital health could exacerbate some healthcare disparities. Cardiology, by virtue of its nature, is a very image-oriented type of specialty, showing patients what happens to their particular heart, their particular vessels, on a certain scan is very meaningful and commonly done. And I think these visual images are very impactful as well. Lastly, I would say that a lot of patients bring in these external sources of data, whether they're heart rhythms from an Apple Watch, whether they're, these purchase single lead electrocardiograms, Cardia's one, or even, home blood pressure recordings, data that is self-monitored is often brought in. I must say the level of patient engagement is variable. Some patients bring in a lot of data, some, bring in, very little. Kind of reminds me of the old anxiety performance curves, and that there's probably a sweet spot that each individual patient has for their own particular engagement. And I'll say one of the difficulties that we have, whether it's a rhythm strip or whether it's a series of blood pressure recordings, is that a lot of these different sources of data that patients bring in for review, whether it's requested or whether they do it de novo on their own in terms of self-monitoring, are individually web-based platforms. And the problem is they often don't link with our electronic medical record. I literally have to print them out, scan them, and then enter them on the EMR. And of course, that disrupts any ability we have to track some of these data longitudinally. So in summary, I would think my experience with digital health in our patients relates to those three factors, particularly in an inner city area. I do realize that even patients in under-resourced areas, virtually all of them have cell phones. And I would say the lower the socioeconomic class, the more and more that they do on their cell phone, and the less and less in terms of tablets and other types of computer resources.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's. I think, again, when you're sitting at with Downstate Medical Center too, that's a neighborhood in need, and it was just amazing to see how Downstate's responded to COVID, especially in the spring of last year as the COVID center for all of Brooklyn. So it was incredible to see the protocols that you guys developed there, and just how information was so important. Not even sharing with patients from physicians, but also physician to physician, as Downstate was developing some of the most advanced protocols for COVID treatment and rehab. So really, really good narrative there. And Dr. Hall, again, you're sitting within a leading platform within the digital health ecosystem and physicians. So obviously you understand physician information access and sharing with patients at a level, and having seen it across ecosystems where you're seeing a number of different contexts between physicians and patients. Tell us a little bit about what you've learned and kind of what you guys are doing as well.
Yes, thank you, Stan. And yes, very insightful to hear the doctors here on the panel share their real life experiences, some of the challenges and the pains, and also the opportunities. So how did we get here to where we are? And we've performed, as you mentioned, Stan, numerous design thinking interviews, primary research, secondary research, tertiary research. And we're looking at, how did we get, what are the economic forces at play? What are the cultural, social forces? We've heard some of that here today. The technology forces, the convergence of technology. It used to be that, when a doctor received their degree, they were pretty much good to go for a lifetime. Now we have Moore's law, we have doubling effect, exponential growth, and we've seen the doubling of knowledge every year. We've heard some of the doctors here talk about the data, patients bringing their own data, and doctors being able to interpret, to analyze, to integrate that data into co-creation, into now is more of a holistic approach of shared decision-making between patient and doctor. And my colleague, Dr. Leonardo Aguiar, will talk a little bit about that. But I just wanted to touch upon some of the pains that doctors are experiencing with this convergence. And some of those pains are stress and burnout. It's, some of the doctors, and I'd like to get the opinion of the doctors on the panel here, wanting to be more involved in the innovative process, wanting to be involved in the decision making. And that requires, according to numerous NGOs, governments, academic institutions around the world, including Standing Committee in Europe, Standing Committee on Doctors, the European Health Commission, WHO, and numerous others, calling doctor digital upskilling and doctors being involved in the innovative process as crucial to solving the serious pains in healthcare. So that means improving doctor digital intelligence, DQ, digital quotient, digital literacy. And as some of the panelists mentioned, doctors sharing their real life experiences in digital health innovation with other doctors, and then sharing that also now with their patients that we mentioned. The patients are experiencing similar pains. They're coming in with the data. They have all this data, and this is causing additional pain. So that's some of what we've learned, the convergence of these forces that brought us to where we are today. Of course, the pandemic accelerated that acceleration another 5 to 10 years, exacerbating these pains and bringing in this need for new solutions that put the doctor first in digital health innovation.
Brilliant. All right. So I think we're on track there. I think we're seeing a lot of very similar issues emerge here around the importance of health information sharing and this incredibly important tie between physicians and patients. And Dr. Aguiar, maybe you can lend us a little bit more context in terms of how your current practices of information sharing with patients have evolved, particularly over the last 18 months, and what you're doing today.
Thank you so much. I would like to share my screen. Usually, this is the type, this is the patient that usually comes to my office, and she was asking for a tummy tuck, but I told her that you could not perform the surgery because you are right now obese with prior diabetes. And she told me, oh, my doctor, I came here for a plastic surgery. You are telling me to take care of my own health. Yes, as a doctor, the main point of my practice is to take care of your life, because you are changing the business and the medical business model. We are changing from disease, procedure, or volume. We are changing to take care of the patients with the low risk patients. We are helping them we are trying to disrupt this usual medical practice from progression of chronic disease to health and low risk patient. And yes, you can ask me, how do a surgeon gain money without surgery? How do you perform that? How do you work like this? Yes, I can disrupt my medical practice by the co-creation of health. Co-creation of health is an ability that we use nowadays to co-share, to co-share the decision with our patients, but it was described by Prahalad as a practice in value creation in marketing experience. How do I do in my patient? But first of all, I have to convince my patient to share the decision, to make them to understand that they are really important to co-share the decision. And I give the patient two kinds of incentives. I gave Laura an emotional incentive. Oh, Laura, in 7 months, I will run a marathon with you. But I also give her a financial incentive. I created the first virtual coin. I told Laura, for every 6 pounds that you eliminate from your weight, I will give you a $300 discount on the price of your surgery. There was no real transaction, only virtual transaction. It changed her mindset. In 7 months, she lost her weight. She became a new woman. But during the process, we had a specific team to co-share the decision. We had a nurse, a physical therapist, we have a personal trainer, we have a whole design process to tell her how to take care of a better life, to eat health, to understand how to use supplements, how to engage your friends. And then Laura changed her lifestyle, changed her life, and then best of everything, he changed her status of health. She wasn't more obese and she wasn't more pre-diabetes. As a plastic surgeon, I didn't perform anything besides then change it and operate her mindset. And then that's what we call co-creating. I helped her to understand that we can co-share a better real life. So during the process, Laura was so engaging that she created a Facebook page. She was co-sharing her information with a lot of people in Brazil, with more than 3,000 colleagues, 3,000 fans. She was telling that she was doing great. She was co-sharing her information that she was running a lot to 12 km. She was performing even better. But during this process, Laura also shared that, oh, today I run 12 km and the next month I will run a 10 km run with my doctor. And when I read that, I literally had to run after her because I never had run in my whole life. So I had to start take care of my own health, start take care of everything. So I learned with my patients autonomy. I have finished this run and relearned mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And this message came all across Brazil, even into Tatiana's house. And she was seeing what Laura said. She was training, performing the same thing that Laura was doing. And that image came all across Brazil. And Tatiana start losing weight, take care of her wealth, and most of everything. Me as a plastic surgeon, the patient came to me because of his physiological needs, and I helped her with the whole chain of pyramid of Maslow, with self-actualization, self-esteem, love, belonging, and then everything changed in Tatiana's life, and everything changing in Laura's life. And they both became so engaged with their health. They both came to politicians, and they were trying to help their community. And I say that I am Laura, we are Laura, and we are more than 55 million pre-diabetic person in North America, more than almost 600 million pre-diabetic in 2045 all over the world. And we have this study about United States of diabetes that we can avoid, if we avoid only a single diabetes conversion, we can save for the healthcare system almost $55,000 in 10 years. So we are starting to treat patients at scale. As a plastic surgeon, how do I scale my practice? Operating more patients, but using this kind of mindset, helping the patient to take care of them, we are thinking about how can we impact the whole healthcare system. And we are using this thinking about how we can use like digital therapeutic to prevent, management, and treat the patient. Use software, using digital data as a software, as a medical device. So as a doctor innovator, we create a prototype of pre-diabetes digital therapeutics in Brazil, and we are treating about 1,000 patients inspired by them without any kind of surgery. So I think for doctors nowadays, this information make a disruptive stress. The doctors need to understand that how to connect artificial intelligence, how to connect digital information, how to connect blockchain, how we can connect social media, how can we use all these tools to improve the doctor experience and improve the quality of health of our patients. That I think how we can upscaling, how we can teach all the doctors to connect these dots in order to avoid this disruptive stress. So we can strategically move from volume to value to help all the patients to stay happier and live longer. So that's the point. That's the way we can see the matrix. Using innovation and data, we can personalize outcomes and use this whole bunch of data to connect, combine, and share creating platforms of care. Thank you so much.
No, that's impressive. I think we're onto something here, and certainly love the model and love the framework. And again, James, based on what Dr. Aguiar has presented here, what's your take? Is that something that makes sense within the context of your practice and what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think novel ways for patients to engage in their care is a huge opportunity. And that can look like a lot of different things. But in general, I think the maxim that, a better informed patient is going to have a better patient experience is largely true. And we certainly see that in cancer. So, if you have a mechanism of chemotherapy teaching that is not only taking place just in your office when they're there for an in-person visit, but has some type of interactive tool that allows them to better understand what to expect from the chemotherapy, they're less likely to get into a scenario where, they're suddenly having intractable nausea and vomiting and they wind up in the emergency room simply because they know to hydrate earlier or to take their anti-nausea medication earlier at the first twinge of nausea. And so I think there is an enormous opportunity for novel ways, for technology to enable novel ways of patient engagement that improve outcomes. The other thing that I'll comment on is, earlier there was the discussion of up-leveling doctors' digital and patients' digital capabilities, and I think that's incredibly important. It's happening whether we like it or not. We spend so much time interacting with software in the patient care process that by hook or by crook, doctors are having to learn. It feels like as we get into more Internet of Things, learning to integrate things into your practice that are coming in a little bit ad hoc, like, as Jason said, getting things like a rhythm strip from a patient in the field as we learn to integrate that, that's ultimately going to result in more technologically savvy doctors and patients, but that can be slow moving. One point of optimism is it was really impressive to see the community oncology community of small physician-owned practices when COVID hit, and this relates to the financial incentives. When COVID hit and CMS decided that they would reimburse telehealth visits as they did in-person visits, it was amazing to see these practices spin that capability up within a week or two. And so we were able to see at Flatiron practice volumes of telehealth visits really jump. So I am hopeful that as doctors and patients get more technologically savvy, and as the financial incentives align, we can make rapid progress to adopting new innovations that really improve the care experience. So that's sort of a ray of hope that I see. I think as we move, so we talked to, Dr. Aguiar talked about the sort of the payment model as we move from volume-based payment and procedure-based payment to actual value, whole patient care. What is the value that we're delivering as a care system? It actually opens doors for physicians. So many people are, the idea of a bundled payment can be disconcerting because it's hard to know what factors within that you control as a clinician, but it also can allow you to try new things that might make you more efficient. So I think we've all had the experience as doctors and patients, wow, it sure stinks to have to make an in-person visit to go in and get one lab result that my doctor could have given me over email over the phone. Yeah, but that doctor doesn't get paid to give you that result over the email over the phone. We need a system that allows innovation through financial incentives so that practices and health systems can remain solvent.
That makes a lot of sense. And, I think one of the things that we're seeing, and this is for you, Jason, really around the patient centricity model taking effect. And I think that's really what we're talking about and what Dr. Aguiar just really went into detail on. And, I think, Jason, from your perspective, having gone through so much and seen so much, some people are calling it the depaternalization of medicine. Others are calling it the consumerization of medicine. There's a lot of different words, but it is a lot about patient empowerment and exploring these new shared decision-making models that are bringing, really new types of relationships between patients and practitioners. And hopefully leading to better outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Conversation there. What have you seen over the last 20 years? What have you seen now over the last 2 years? And what do you think you're going to see over the next several years?
So let me start out by congratulating Leonardo. Really a poignant story, one of digital health success that seems to have become contagious. And I must say, from an academic standpoint, there's a wealth of literature showing that the greater the patient engagement, the better will become patient outcomes. Again, I'm going to look at that glass as half full, but also half empty. And while I'm an idealist, I'm also a realist as well. The majority of patients do express interest in digital health solutions, but yet I must contend that real-world experience shows, rather low engagement. The majority of patients that start with apps don't really, continue with them. And I think that's because no one size fits all. What I've seen is that patients come in various shapes, sizes, but also types. And I do think that, the idea of co-creation, as much as it seems like a dual phenomenon, really becomes, ironically, a very personalized experience. And I think David gave a brilliant summary of that thought notion. And I think what Leonardo did is really overcome some of the obstacles of patient engagement through digital health. He made it specific and relevant. And I have found that in patients with hypertension, high blood pressure, that blood pressure monitoring is specific and relevant. And if you take a careful family history and you find that one of their parents doesn't have the same cognitive ability that they used to, and that one explains that hypertension not only causes stroke and heart failure and, kidney disease requiring dialysis, but probably more commonly causes dementia of all types, including Alzheimer's, felt to be a neurodegenerative disease, then what you do is you're making it very specific and very relevant to that particular patient population. Another obstacle that I think Leonardo brilliantly overcame was managing to use digital technology, but yet maintain the human experience. And I think that that's a very important balance as well. And, digital, let's call it literacy, or DQ, as I like the term David, proposed, doesn't exist in isolation. The depaternalization, as you refer to, really is contextual. What do I mean by that? Well, it's not only, the DQ of the physician, but also the DQ of the patient, or more so, the health literacy of the patient. The one thing physicians can be assumed to have is a high level of health literacy. So I find that this co-creation is really dependent upon a couple of things, perhaps the DQ of the physician, and I'm sure we could come up with an equation to illustrate this collectively, but also the healthcare literacy of the patient. And I find very often that the two are collinear. Patients with greater DQs are also more healthcare literate. And unfortunately, conversely, patients that are not healthcare literate are often not digitally literate as well. So again, I think congratulations to Leonardo on overcoming many of the obstacles that I've seen over the last 20 years and over the last 10 years. And, very importantly, I agree. I think the pandemic has done many things. There are some silver linings, and it clearly has accelerated this change.
Absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. And again, to dig into that depaternalization of medicine, and really this new patient centricity around medicine, David, you're seeing this all over the country. You're again, as a physician, digital health leader, you see what's happening. What's your take? Where do we go from 1995 to 2020 January, and where did we go from February 2020 to today, and where do you think we're going over the next several years?
Yes, thank you, Stan. Thank you, Dr. Lazar. Right, this is new for everyone, and we've mentioned there's, the doctors are experiencing similar pains as the patients experiencing those pains with the plethora of digital health devices that are now available. I just saw yesterday that Best Buy bought a digital health company in Scotland, $400 million. It was the second largest exit in Scotland of digital health companies ever. And we have seen, not only patients needing to learn about digital health and acquire the DQ, or digital intelligence, but also the doctors, and also many others involved, investors. So we've seen just this year alone, hundreds of billions of dollars poured into digital health, and investors didn't know exactly how to assess or how to measure digital health companies. They were just getting used to measuring and assessing SaaS, software as a service companies, and now they need to learn digital health. So we've seen this year the first multi-billion-dollar IPOs, Babylon and Doximity and a couple of others, Doctor Communities, and AI, kind of an AI diagnosis app, health and wellness app. And so this is really the first year that we're seeing this type of exponential growth, and that's going to continue for the next, unforeseeable future. Projections are, $1 trillion economy in the next 4 years. And we believe that, enabling the doctors first with the right mindsets, the design thinking mindset, the exponential thinking mindset of the 6 Ds, digitizing and democratizing disruption, the 6 Ds of exponential thinking, as well as other new mindsets such as flow and even synarchy versus hierarchy. We had talked a little bit about co-creation, working together, sharing decision making. So I think we're going to see the next few years these forces continuing to evolve. The economic forces that I talked about, the cultural and social forces, and then the technology forces continuing to grow and continuing to accelerate. And we believe the mindset is important, the digital literacy, and then sharing, because doctors are very busy. And so one last thing is sharing of the real life experiences. We had talked about doctor to doctor, and then doctor to patient. So they're able to share, doctors are able to or trust other doctors. They trust what works, what improves patient care delivery and outcome. And we're developing new measurements, not only for the doctors, but for the patients and the processes to show exactly how this is improving healthcare, how it's in digital health and digital innovation is positively impacting value-based healthcare, increasing revenue, decreasing costs, and improving that patient care delivery and outcome. And there are a lot of pains with adopting the technology and innovating digital health technologies. And we believe change management is very important in addition to the mindset. So doctors say, how can I keep my head above, I can hardly keep my head above water now, and the beds are full. How can I possibly innovate? And I will leave off with saying, it is possible. We can use an accelerate model, which is a dual accelerator model. We can have business as usual on the left, and we can innovate on the right. And it does become a new mindset. So it just becomes a natural way of thinking, and it just becomes a natural part of the process of delivering better patient care and improving outcomes.
I think you're absolutely right on that. And I think, again, this kind of evolution that we're seeing going from kind of 95 to 2020 or 2019, and then what's happened over the last 2 years with the pandemic, bringing out almost a renaissance in the need for better, faster, more efficient, and more credible patient information and physician-patient communication. And now where do we go from here? Again, Dr. Aguiar, if you could answer the same questions, what have you seen over the last 20 years, over the last 2 years, and what do you predict we're going to see over the next few years as we go into this new endemic virtual first healthcare system where, really this digital information that we're sharing with our patients is by far going to be more critical than ever as patients are struggling to understand what to do and how to do it with their healthcare, because we're seeing this massive epidemiological spike with diabetes, cancer, heart disease, depression, just mental health across the board. And so now we've got to find a way to help patients not just be diagnosed and treated, but how do we help them chronically? What are you seeing, again, in that evolution past 20 years, past 2 years, next several years?
Thank you, Stan, Jason, James, David. It's first of all, I would like to talk a little bit what David told before, that we as a doctor, we are in the middle of the war. We have a lot of the hospital are full of patients. We don't have the necessary supplements. Everything is more expensive, more difficult. The patients are more stressed. So we are using this mindset of innovation to survive as a professional doctor and still deliver a better healthcare. So when we as a doctor understand that we are not just giving the patient health, we are helping the patient to have better health outcome. What do I say as a health outcome? I always ask my patient, what do you need? What do you want for your life? All the patient tells me, I want to live longer. But I ask him, do you want to live 100 years? Yes, I do want to live 100 years. But when you get 100 years, do you want to be with diabetes, Alzheimer, glaucoma? No, I don't want to be. I want to be 100 years and even run a marathon with 100 years. So we are starting to thinking of healthcare as a health outcome. So every one of us as a stakeholder of each part of the ecosystem, we're helping the patient to achieve his health outcome, to have 100 year, a quality 100 year, but when he achieves 100 year, he can run a marathon. So what we have to do right now to treat our disease and to prevent Alzheimer, to prevent blood pressure, to prevent all these epidemic disease that are really behavior driven. What are the kinds of behavior that we must change as a doctor? First of all, the majority of doctors has burnout, majority of doctors are stressed, are with pre-diabetes. How we can learn to take care of our health outcomes and then teach the patient to talk and understand about health outcomes. Because what happens nowadays, we don't have a healthcare system. We have a disease system. You only enter to the healthcare system if you have a disease. If you go to your doctor, you tell your doctor, oh, I saw at HITLAB, I saw Dr. Leonardo speaking, and I think I have a prediabetes. I want to develop, to co-create a program for me to live longer and healthier. The doctor will tell, sorry, my patient, I have full of patients here with disease. I cannot help you. I don't know how to help you. So in my opinion, we are going to personalize at scale doing this kind of co-creation. We are working in a more interdisciplinary way to help the patient. I loved the way Dr. Jason tell the patients to treat their blood pressure, because not only to protect your heart, protect your veins, but protect your mind, protect the way you think, protect the way you will interact with your family. So I think that's the way how we can personalize at scale using the digital tools. That's the point. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, it's a lot, and it's a lot of burden for physicians as well as patients. Patients don't want to constantly be bombarded with health information. They're generally they want to be reminded about how healthy they are, and they're trying to get back to being what they were when they were 21 or 22 or whatever. And that's really the cornerstone here is that when we're doing our research at HITLAB, we see that the patient engagement with a lot of these tools is very low. They really want to be engaged at their time and their place. And I think that's one of the cornerstones of, user experience and empathetic design as these tools are being built so that there's a greater communications linkage between physicians and patients. And let's talk about this now. So we've talked a little bit about the past, present, future, and let's talk about the benefits of the future and these evolving platforms that are coming around. And what we're anticipating will be this renaissance, if you will, of physician-patient communications, and how in this renaissance, physicians and patients are co-creating not just the decision-making process where patients will feel more empowered and they'll own it more, hopefully, as this democratization process takes place, but also how that takes place so it doesn't drive physicians crazy, right? Physicians right now are going through the Great Resignation. They're under more stress than we've seen in the healthcare system in the United States and around the globe now since the early 1900s. This is extraordinary. I can't even imagine being a physician in the 19 teens during the Spanish flu. I mean, that must have been completely insane. where protective measures were basically meaningless. They did what they could. I don't know if you've seen pictures of physicians with cloth masks and things like that, but obviously they were doing everything they could. They must have seen massive issues with, the spread of the Spanish flu amongst the physician and clinician population, with nurses and whatnot contracting it at critical rates. But today, what do we think will improve this kind of patient outcome? What kind of models, and again, we'll start with you, James, do you recommend, as a physician who's been leading the charge on this, what kind of models do physicians need to deploy to not just share information, but share it in a way that improves patient outcomes at the end of the day?
Yeah, so the two things I would call out are clinical decision support, both for doctors and patients. So surfacing the right data about the patient and their disease at the right time so that everyone can make a decision. So I like to think of, we all have these GPS directional apps on our phones, et cetera. Imagine a scenario where you're there with a patient and you say, look, here's where you are, here's where you want to go. There are 3 different paths you can take. Here's where you're, this one might land you in the ER, this one might land you with a better outcome. And it really becomes a much easier way to lay out the information so the patient can make the right decision for them as an individual patient, and then understand their journey. So I think clinical decision support technology is going to play a huge role in that. The other piece is predictive analytics. So understanding more about which patients, how to direct patients to resources. So who, there are some predictive models. I hesitate to use the sort of sexy terms of AI and machine learning, but there are ways that technology is going to allow us to better predict how to direct resources. So high risk patients for winding up in the hospital, the emergency room. We can build a system around that if we know who they are, that can direct the right resource to them and improve their outcome. I would just underscore, by way of sort of closing thoughts on this for myself, medicine is fundamentally a human endeavor. It always has been and it always will be. The joy and the calling of practicing medicine generally for physicians and nurses and everyone that touches patients is the human endeavor of healing people and trying to make people decrease their burden of disease and improve their quality of life. Technology and digital stuff are tools to do that. And so, they're never going to replace the human factor, but they can darn sure make it easier and make us better at it. So I think about better decision support for patients and doctors, and things like predicting which patients are at high risk and where do you need to direct your resources.
That's great. Yeah, and it is really, significantly oriented around the kind of resources that people need to do that. Because we're already as a very strained healthcare system from a human resource standpoint as it is. And when a new project, especially if a new digital health project comes into a health system, the first thing that people do is immediately say, not it, no one wants to touch it. They're already working 60 hours a week. The last thing they want to do is be in charge of deploying a new technology. So that's a critical component to think about, again, from a position of empathy. Who owns it at the end of the day? Jason, same question to you. How, from your perspective, now going through past, present, future, and now looking at how these tools are deployed in a rational and empathetic way to be successful, what are some of your recommendations on how physicians should pursue deploying digital health platforms to improve physician-patient communication?
I would start off by saying that I think we're at an important crossroads. I think many physicians, and I would consider myself in the middle of the pack age-wise, grew up in the BC era before computers. And I think that the physician of 2030 is going to need a very different skill set with greater skills in their toolbox to be able to take care of patients. I fundamentally agree with Jim that medicine is a human endeavor. However, healthcare is more and more about managing data. And I think when you look at the frustrations of physicians, it's how to manage data and how to do it in an efficient manner. I remember the introduction of EMRs, and it was painful. And you know what? It still is painful. A couple of years ago, I gave a symposium, and I actually logged in. I password protected and the audience didn't see, but it literally took me 59 seconds to log in to my electronic medical record. A very awkward, a very big pause of 59 seconds. And the IT folks would say, oh, that's just technology. And the answer is, yeah, I know it's technology, but in the real world experience, it's still slow and painful even to log on to an electronic medical record, which sometimes closes on you and causes relogging on as well. I love the idea of this GPS display. I was thinking more dashboard where you can show the patient and have this big screen with a dashboard of all the patient's, health report card, if you will. So I think a lot of the frustrations of physicians arise from the fact that things have changed so quickly, as I think David, alluded to, and that the training that physicians have had did not prepare them for the technical revolution that we are seeing in the digital health revolution. And it is my belief that the Generation X and subsequent generations will become more tech savvy, and the physicians of tomorrow will also be more tech savvy. And we are going to have to rethink medical education to provide them future physicians with the toolbox of skills that they will need to take care of patients.
Yeah, that's that's a huge issue. And when we start talking about that, we're seeing all these new platforms develop. It was alluded to earlier by David when he was talking about the new platforms that have evolved over the last 2 years, and what they all require new training. And so we've now seen things like Teladoc and numerous other types of electronic health record integration, telemedicine tools, remote patient monitoring tools, where we're now tracking patients from home and things like that. So it is an incredibly complex system. Frankly, you're right. Again, you're one of the top medical schools in the country, Jason. That the training just is yet to come on managing. Medical students are thrust into this, and they're expected to know how to do this since they've been on Twitter and Facebook since they were walking, and have grown up with iPhones. So we just assume, oh, they're just going to know how to do this. But there's whole generations. There's a couple of generations of physicians that didn't grow up on Facebook and didn't grow up on Instagram. And so this is a new world order for them and a tough one to understand. And again, so David, we'll pose the same question to you. From everything that you're doing and everything that you've seen, what are the best practices that physicians need to adopt in order to ensure that these new physician-patient communications platforms are being deployed and being utilized to really optimize better patient outcomes?
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Kanowski, and thank you, Dr. Lazar, Aguiar, and Hamrick for your input. Yes, I think, Stan, you had mentioned empathetic design. So I really think, and I believe many of the panelists had also touched upon the human aspect, HMI, human machine interaction, and having that empathy and having that design thinking mindset, I believe is key, because you cannot know everything. You need to have the mindset to be able to be agile, to be flexible, to be able to co-create, to make iterative design improvements of your creations. And so this is an ongoing, process. It's an ongoing mindset. We say doctors may not be replaced by AI, but doctors with AI will replace doctors without. Just to speak a bit to the data and the AI, artificial intelligence, that we were also discussing. Again, I think the change management, we had talked about the pressures of doctors, not wanting to be, maybe they don't want to volunteer for yet another technology initiative or something. So the change management and the mindset really makes it a part of the everyday process, and it will continue to become part of you and become part of what you're doing in this human experience. And so the change management is important. Doctors wanting to contribute to something, bigger than themselves, and really becoming part of the process, and not used to be skunk works. So, if you remember I think it was IBM, they would set up a separate innovative center, completely, separate from the main operations. It's no longer, we can no longer do that. So it becomes part of you. It becomes part of what you're doing. So the doctors won't necessarily need to volunteer, raise their hand and say, I want to lead this implementation. They will just, they'll have a seat at the table. They will just naturally be part of the entire innovative process. And even the large companies, the large tech companies, have acknowledged the reason that they failed over the past few years was exactly this reason: not involving the doctors, not taking the empathetic design and human-centered approach. And now they're circling back around and saying, we're going to do just that, because they now get it, that you cannot just create the technology, push it out on the doctors. Thank you.
Yep. No, I think that's spot on. And again, just an amazing panel. The lessons learned from here, we can almost start writing a textbook on how to not only develop, but how to deploy and ultimately, promote and diffuse these sorts of platforms to physicians and their patients. So just an incredible bastion of and a wealth of knowledge here. Thank you all today for joining us. And again, in the audience, thank you from, and again, just looking at the attendee panelists, just people from around the world joining us here. Thank you all. I know it's very late in the evening for some of you, and hopefully you can jump off now and grab a cocktail of your choice, preferably a nice whiskey. But thank you all. Thank you very much for joining. A virtual round of applause from everybody watching today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys. Just echoing what Stan said, a fantastic panel here. For those who want to jump off and grab that whiskey, feel free. For those who want more knowledge, we're starting another fireside chat just now on all things prenatal care. So we're talking to Ashley Clare from Clare Fertility, and Carly Buchling, who's the founder of Natal Comfort. That'll be over on the agenda, the next tab under this one. So thank you all again, and we'll see you there in a moment.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.